How can a Russian playwright's gun help you write a better story? On today's video, let's look at the concept of Chekhov's gun. In 1889, Russian playwright Anton Chekhov sent a famous letter to his friend, which said, "One must never place a loaded rifle on the stage if it isn't going to go off. It's wrong to make promises you don't mean to keep." From there, the concept of Chekhov's gun was born, and has influenced writers ever since. Of course, there are lots of writers who agree and disagree with the principle that Chekhov was setting up here. So today, let's explore exactly what it is, what it means, how you can use it in your writing. First of all, if it wasn't clear already, Chekhov opposed introducing elements to the story that didn't add anything to the narrative, or simply teased some higher drama that was never introduced or paid off. As Chekhov says himself, we want to avoid making promises to the reader that we can't or don't deliver, as this will negatively affect their enjoyment and make them less satisfied with the conclusion of the story if an element they were paying close attention to is simply forgotten or ignored. Determining what is a gun and what isn't is very much down to the writer. As a writer, you determine how much significance is given to an object in the way you write about it, although some objects carry inherent symbolism. For example, the wine being drunk at dinner in the story can be explained away in a single sentence and forgotten, and therefore not be important. Or it can be experienced in detail, and therefore have more weight placed upon it. Defining which is the responsibility of the writer, as you're the one who knows the story, the direction it's going in, and what needs to be communicated to the reader. This very much goes back to our less is more and show don't tell videos, where you need to decide how much detail is for colour and how much confuses or saturates the scene. That's why balance is important. The more reader's time you spend with something, the more expectation there will be that it has a function later in the story. You can highlight character skills, objects that will play a role later, or actions undertaking to make the story more interesting and set up satisfying endings. It also adds to the readability of your work, as when readers go back, they can identify the guns and watch for them being employed. As I've mentioned, some things have significance as part of their being and context. Things such as weapons, supernatural elements, or unusual character traits. These all come with attention due to their uncommon or powerful nature. So as a writer, no matter how little you write about them, they will be remembered. For example, in A Song of Ice and Fire, attention is given to the fact that Oberyn Martell is an expert in poison. As a reader, we expect that skill to be utilised at some point in the narrative. That detail is unique and uncommon, so it draws the reader's attention. And this is exactly Chekhov's point. Things that are out of place or uncommon shouldn't be included and take away the reader's attention unless they're going to have an influence on the narrative later. It's distracting. It takes away from the other things that are important in the script. We should also remember that different pairings carry certain assumptions too. The context, location, and actor all play a part in how significant something is. Guns at a gun exhibition, or carried by a member of the armed forces, will not make readers sit up and take note. But a gun in a hotel room, or carried by an old lady, might. This is where you can get really creative with Chekhov's gun too, because it can also be used to make seemingly ordinary objects exceptional by placing extra emphasis upon them. When writing about a meal, a butter knife would usually not be mentioned, and just assumed as part of the setting. But if a character, especially one in distress, were to note a knife, then we as the reader would expect it to be utilised later in the story. By placing focus on seemingly normal objects, we can elevate their weight and completely subvert audience expectations, creating surprising and shocking twists in the story. Again, this is all about a writer selecting where to place weight. Highlighting all normal objects doesn't have this effect. It's about balance. Chekhov's gun is a great rule to keep in the back of your head as a writer. Chekhov was really against introducing unnecessary objects into a scene that can take attention away from where the focus should be, creating unsatisfactory experiences for the audiences. Of course, there are other artists, such as Ernest Hemingway, who believe that you should add lots of detail to your scene to make it seem more realistic, and at the end of the day, it's all about balance. But keeping Chekhov's gun in your mind is a great way to remember to focus on the important details, to make sure that you don't overindulge and get distracted by things that don't really matter and that might make your reader unsatisfied. It's not an airtight rule. You don't have to use it for everything, and lots of critics would argue that following it 100% will make your work quite colourless, so don't do that. But just remember, as Chekhov said, don't make false promises to your audience. Don't set up threads and ideas that aren't going to be paid off or satisfied in the end, because ultimately that will affect the enjoyment that your reader has with your story. So, I hope you keep Chekhov's gun in the back of your mind when you go back to writing, and just remember that details do matter and carry weight. If you found this video useful, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing the video with your friends, because it really helps the channel grow. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you all next week.